Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We've all seen them, right? Those kids who just effortlessly go with the flow. They never throw a tantrum, they never cause a fuss. They're what we call the perfectly behaved children. But if we actually peel back the layers of that flawless behavior, we usually find a pretty complex hidden cost. So today, we're unpacking the fascinating and honestly, often deeply misunderstood psychology of the easy child.
Have you ever been at a dinner party or maybe a family gathering and heard a parent proudly declare, "Oh, they were such an easy child"? It's almost always treated as the ultimate compliment. But I want you to take a second and really reflect on what that phrase actually implies. What is truly going on beneath the surface when a child causes absolutely zero friction in their environment?
Okay, let's dive into this. Society absolutely praises the outward appearance here. You know the type. No drama, no trouble, completely low maintenance. But this cultural ideal, it often serves as a heavy mask. The inward reality is usually one of intense emotional suppression and the continuous hiding of their core needs. Being easy isn't just a quirky personality trait. It's literally a childhood survival mechanism that fundamentally shapes a person's entire psychology.
So, what exactly is happening behind that mask? Well, there are 5 hidden behavioral traits that these children almost universally share. First, they learn to adapt quickly. Second, they internalize their emotions. Third, they become hyper-independent. Fourth, they tie love to being low maintenance. And fifth, they hide their needs. Let's unpack exactly how this easy survival kit is actually built.
Right, so it begins with rapid adaptation. What adults often praise as this exceptional maturity is actually a child acting like an emotional chameleon. They're constantly reading the room. They might sense a parent's bad mood and instantly make themselves invisible. Or maybe they become the designated family peacemaker. They literally adapt their entire personality just to keep the peace and avoid being a burden.
And because they're so laser-focused on adapting, they end up living by this unspoken rule. No drama, no rebellion, no trouble. But here's the thing. A lack of outward rebellion absolutely does not mean a lack of negative feelings. It simply means the child is internalizing everything. They're taking all those heavy, complicated emotions, the anger, the sadness, the fear, and just pushing them down deep so they don't disturb the adults around them.
And this brilliantly illustrates our next point. Over time, carrying everything completely alone morphs into a rigid hyper-independence. On the outside, this looks like incredible strength, right? Like a person who just has everything totally handled. But quietly, they're trapped in a psychological cage. They become entirely unable to ask for help or express vulnerability, which leaves them profoundly isolated even when they're surrounded by people. So the crucial point is that this isolation drastically warps their view of affection. Healthy development requires the solid ground of unconditional love. But the easy child internalizes a very different, highly conditional metric. They learn this heartbreaking lesson that they are only worthy of love, attention, and connection as long as they balance the scales, meaning they must remain totally low maintenance and never ever cause friction.
Because their worth is so intrinsically tied to being easy, these children systematically bury their own needs to maintain the illusion. They become absolute experts at pretending everything is completely fine. But here's the real tragedy of it all. If you bury your needs deep enough and for long enough, eventually, you forget where you put them. You actually lose touch with what you require to feel safe and fulfilled.
And so this childhood survival strategy echoes forward through time. The early years of adapting and internalizing, well, they calcify during adolescence into that rigid hyper-independence we talked about. By the time they reach adulthood, that quote-unquote easy child is now an adult quietly carrying some really heavy emotional baggage. This deeply ingrained role dictates their deepest sense of self-worth, limits their emotional expression, and it fundamentally alters the dynamics of their adult relationships. Now you might be wondering how this applies to you. Many people going through this explainer might actually recognize pieces of themselves in this exact pattern. So I want to leave you with a thought to deeply reflect on. Are you still playing the role of the easy child in your adult relationships today? If you are, well, it might just be time to look inward, unpack that inner psychology, and ask yourself if you're finally ready to take off the mask and take up the space you absolutely deserve.